Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Debating for America's Youth. My name is Nathan Fair, and today I'm interviewing the national champion and the runner-up at the NSDA National Tournament in Expository Speaking. Today I'm interviewing Kathryn, Tereshko, and Sahiba Tandon, who I'm interviewing today. Welcome, you both.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so my first question today is, how do you get over those speaking nerves during a tournament?
Well, personally, I know me and Kathryn kind of do the same thing, with each other. Well, Kathryn's really big on giving pep talks to other people and especially our team, but we both love listening to like hype up music. We both love AJR and she actually got me into them. So I have like my speech and debate playlist that I'll just walk around about 10 minutes before my round and plug in my headphones and just listen to music, calm down, maybe run through like a certain part of my speech for like a second or two and just kind of collect myself before I walk into a room.
Yeah. I think all that Sahiba said, and like just figuring out what works for you. Like I know people who it really calms them to like be around their friends right before a round, and like they want to be with other people. But like I know me personally, I have to like be alone and like get into my own like head before I go into a round. So yeah, just like testing out different like things that might work for you.
That completely makes sense. I really agree with the music part. That's what I personally do before going into a round to kind of hype myself up, and then kind of get out of the mental space of like the tournament. So I think a lot of the times, especially with speech and debate tournaments, historically running, not on time, people can get really stressed out before a round while waiting for the judge or waiting for the round to start. And so I think that like kind of getting out of that mental space of just thinking about it and stressing over it, it's probably really healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you obviously are the national champion and the national runner-up and won and got second place at the national tournament. How did you stand out to the judges? Because obviously at the national tournament, there's the top people in the entire nation. How do you stand out to the judges?
Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I think personally, so Sahiba and I actually were lucky with our expository topics in that we've been working with them all year in info. So like we were very, very comfortable with them. But I think what makes a good, like not only expository or info or oratory speech is that like it's very clear and like you have like a very pointed argument. So like I knew exactly what Sahiba was trying to tell me about swearing, or like I tried to communicate very clearly what I was trying to say about blood donation. And I think one thing that's kind of specific to expos or like supplementals, and even more so just like online tournaments in general, is that like the judge really just wants to feel good and wants to like you. And if you can make a judge want to like you, and if you can connect with them, whether that's through humor or through pathos or through like a really clear like logical argument, that's going to help you stand out. So I think just like having your thing and being able to like be a real person and not just be a speaker giving an oratory or an info or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And also with both of our speeches, especially with expos, like Kathryn said, like we'd had these speeches all year and they were kind of already molded into like what we wanted to talk about. But with expos, we both got the freedom to kind of change it up a little bit and bring out the relevancy to like our current times, which is actually really cool because a lot of people, I think in expos, like already had an idea and might just like stick with that, but taking it kind of on a global scale and relating it to not just the people in your room or the people that you're competing with, but people of all ages and all backgrounds is really important and really makes you stick out and you appeal to everybody. So.
That makes sense. Well, speaking about adapting your speech, obviously expository is 5 minutes of speaking. How do you condense all the information, especially on topics that are kind of like large and broad or global, as you guys were saying? How do you fit that into that 5 minute time period without kind of like talking really fast or overwhelming the judge?
Yeah, I definitely had a really hard time with this. Like this was probably the hardest thing I had to do because even when writing a 10-minute speech, I always collect like 15 websites. I have so much information and it's so hard for me to condense what I want to say into like a paragraph. So definitely switching it to 5 minutes made me have to prioritize what my message was. So in the beginning, I would say with having swearing as an informative, I kind of talked about like a variety of implications, like people in the workplace, people of different backgrounds. But when you have like only 5 minutes, I really had to prioritize simply talking about like the Black Lives Matter movement. So like I focused on that. And then, yeah, you kind of have to throw away the rest of the information, but there's also ways that you can incorporate it maybe in like a sentence or two later on in your speech. So yeah, it's all about prioritizing for me.
Yeah, and I think just like knowing what your intention is, like going into the speech. It's actually funny. Sahiba and I just got done working at a middle school speech camp for oratory and info, and we talked about this a lot. How like it's hard to write a speech just on like friendship or just on like swearing in general, and like want to cover everything about swearing or want to cover everything about blood donation. And you kind of have to know going into your speech what point you want to make about it, like what you want your audience to learn about that thing in particular by the end of your speech. Because like just saying that your general purpose is to inform or, you know, to expose and expose, I guess it's like, well, yeah, that's what every speech is going to do. So you have to know what your end goal is, and then just like only stick with information that's going to help you reach that goal.
That makes sense. And obviously, you've talked about already your guys' topics, which was swearing and blood drives. How did you guys come up with those topics? And yeah, how did you come up with those topics?
So for me, I have always been like a frequent blood donor. Like, there's no real reason why. It was just something that I like got fulfillment from doing, really. And when I was like coming up with an info topic, I was talking to our coach Corey Shea and another coach Bob Ickes, who does private coaching. And they were saying, you know, like it's really good if you can come up with an informative topic that's like personal to you and that you have some kind of connection with, because then you're already like invested in it. And that's not like a necessity for info, but it's kind of a good starting point. And I was like, all right, well, like blood donation is something that I'm interested in, that I like doing. And then the more I started to research it, the more I realized like how relevant it was and how much there was that wasn't fully understood about it. So I think, yeah, just like picking a topic that you are interested enough in to want to like continue researching and writing about for a whole year, that you think other people are going to want to hear about too.
Yeah, so like unlike Kathryn, I feel like she has a really good direct approach where she can take like personal instances from her life and like put them in a speech. I kind of work backwards. I feel like I kind of get a list of ideas or a list of topics, or I'll just sit on Google and like look up stuff, and I'll have like 15 ideas. Then I'll send them to my coach and we'll talk about how tangible it would actually be to write like a 10 or 5 minute speech about them. And then after I come up with the topic, I kind of involve myself into it, which it doesn't always work for every topic. So that's kind of a good way to rule out if you're brainstorming a bunch of ideas. You have to be able to put yourself into it and actually be passionate about it. So when it came to picking swearing, it was definitely like, I think the third option on my list, but I was like, this could be really funny. And it's actually so true how much it impacts like your life. Like people see you so differently depending on how you swear, how much you swear, and stuff like that. So
That completely makes sense. Yeah, I'll agree. My brother does informative speaking as well. And he had a topic that I don't think he was as passionate about. And you could tell in his speech. But then he was like thinking about other topics. And then he was talking about it. And I could just, hear the passion, right? And I was like, that's so much better for you because that's something you're actually interested in or you care about. So definitely choose that side. So I think that's smart. In terms of researching for your guys' topics, so I know you were mentioning before you had like 15 sources. How do you like find those sources and like, I guess, figure out which ones are the best to put in your speech?
So our coach is really like keen on finding reliable sources. So I know everybody on our team that does rhetorical events is always looking up like under the Google like scholar authors, or we have a bunch of like archives that you can search through. But it's really important when you're looking up information about your topic, not to just go with the first like 5 sources. Like you want to be clicking on those like bottom pages, and especially ones that end in like .org or like .gov. Like we talked about this with our middle schoolers that we were helping out, that it's really important not to just see like a Wikipedia page or like history.com and jump on top of that. Like obviously it'll give you condensed information, but it's not always reliable. So even though you might be diving into articles that might be pages long, they're definitely worth it because people can actually take the information for what you're saying and it's credible and it's reliable.
Yeah, I think just building off of that, like having variety in sources too. Like I know Sahiba and I are both big on like, you don't want it to all just be like New York Times articles. You want to have like statistics from studies in, and you want to have like someone's personal story in, and maybe if you have like an expert on the topic who like wrote about it, all things like that. Just because like if you're all referencing articles, like your entire speech is going to have kind of a one-dimensional perspective on the topic, and it's good to bring in like a variety of different perspectives, especially because like in terms of different judges, like I know like if I'm being judged by someone who coaches policy debate, they're going to care, like they're going to listen to the numbers that I'm saying, they're going to care about the statistics. Whereas if I'm being judged by a parent, they're going to connect more with like a personal story about, like, oh, like there was this child who like their life was saved because they needed blood, like things like that. So just being able to, really expand your appeal just using what kind of sources you're using.
That completely makes sense. And yeah, I think that personal touch can a lot of the times make you stand out. I do congressional debate, and I think that especially applies, especially in the introduction, like using a personal story. So then you don't just bore the judges with a lot of numbers. And for the more lay judges as well, having that personal story can a lot of times stand out to those judges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then in closing, do you each have a message for the speech and debate community and everyone who's watching this interview right now? Do you have anything you would like to say to them? Some people took this question on the direction of things that they would like to see improved in the community, and some people just talked about, like, I guess, how thankful they were to the community. So however you want to answer this question, it's your time.
I know I would just like to encourage every member of the speech and debate community to keep using their voices, especially during this time in like our nation's climate right now. It's so important to keep the dialogue and conversation going about everything from Black Lives Matter to the coronavirus. Like keep educating yourself and encouraging your peers to educate themselves too, because everyone's opinions are valid and your feelings are valid. And it's really important to keep using your voice and not staying silent.
Yeah, I think like as a graduating senior, I have gained a lot of perspective on what I've gotten from speech. And I think my two big things are just like be honest and be kind, because it can get really hard to get caught up in like wanting to win and the competitive success and a lot of the elitism in speech. And you kind of have to look at like, all right, it's good to have competitive goals. That's incredible. And it's awesome to do well and like very fulfilling. And of course we all want to see like our efforts rewarded, but it's important to look at like what your intention is and see what kind of person that's going to make you when you come out of speech. So just like doing everything that you do authentically and like going into these tournaments, wanting to just become a better speaker and wanting to tell stories that are true and wanting to educate people and educate yourself and be a better person, and just being kind too. I mean, I think Sahiba and I can both say like we've met some of our best friends through this activity, and it's really, I mean, I know I totally struggled with this of like coming into this activity being so intimidated by like big names and like all these super like competitively successful people, but most people in this activity are so incredibly kind, and there's so much to gain from being friends with them. And people I've met through oratory are some of the smartest people I've ever met. And I think just trying to be a good role model for your own community too. You're never too good to talk to the novices on your circuit, that kind of. And just be the person in speech that you want to see do well. Like the kind of people who, when you see them winning a tournament and you're happy for them because you're like, wow, that's a great person and they're a great speaker, just trying to emulate that.
I completely agree. When I went to NSDA Nationals last year, I actually met Evan Eiglarsh, which I would assume most people have seen his performance of Tammy the Dinosaur, but it was just like so awesome, I guess, to like see how nice he was just to me, who wasn't really anyone in the community. And so I completely agree. And I think that like looking back over my years in speech and debate as a senior as well, I kind of realized that like a lot of times in tournaments, I would focus on like winning, right? Or getting that trophy at the end of the day. But I sometimes maybe didn't focus enough on like just hanging out with my team before the awards or at the award session, and didn't really have an emphasis on that. But looking back, that's the things I remember, like meeting new people at tournaments, the traveling aspect, and then the winning stuff is cool. But looking back, you'll remember the, I guess, experiences and the people you met much more than you will like the winning in the moment.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like at this point, the last 3 years have just been like every tournament has been different for me because I've made more memories with my team and everyone outside of my team. And it's really Like it's so corny to be like, it's not about winning, but like genuinely going to I just get so excited every weekend. I'm like, I'm hanging with my best friends. Like, yeah, I'm not going to a tournament. I'm hanging out with my friends. Like, this is literally like the best group of people. And it's so important to just be open and welcoming to everyone. And yeah, like Kathryn said, being kind and yeah.
I completely agree. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I know Sahiba and I have like major experience with this of, so just like for context, the two of us come from a very, 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 very small team. There's like 10 people on our team, and we were the only like entries and expos from our school. And for, you know, us to be able to share this experience together, it like, the actual success couldn't have, you know, like, of course it was great, but what really mattered to us was being able to like share it with our team. And like, you know, the night that breaks came out, like I drove to Sahiba's house and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just being able to share this moment with my friend. And I think this activity is, you know, great for the skills that it gives you, but it's important to not take for granted the people that you get from it.
That completely makes sense. Well, I want to thank you so much for accepting this interview and sharing your advice with the speech and debate community.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so much.
having us.